We now move to, uh, brief addresses by our dignitaries on the dais. I'd like to start with inviting Dr. R Vasavi, who retired from the National Institute of Advanced Studies a few years back, has been the founder of one of the founders of the Network of Rural and Agrarian Studies and runs an organization called Punarchith. So she'll be talking to us about agriculture in the time of three emergencies. Over to you, Dr. Vasavi.
Thank you. I'd like to first congratulate Shambhu Prasad and all the wonderful IRMA team for putting this gathering together, which has brought so many of us from various parts of India and including other parts of the world. I think we are here together to think about pathways towards what we think should be the challenge to the dominant model of industrial chemical agriculture and all the depredations that it has spread across the world, not only in India. But as we do this for India, I'd like to call attention to two issues, which is the need for us, even as we think about transitions towards sustainable models, to think about those models as not a singular model or in a singular form of agroecology, but towards that of multiple types of agricultures. Because if you look at history and if you look at, and I know many of you as researchers have already recognized this and you all will be explicating this over the three days, is that it is the diversities of agricultures and the viability over many centuries that really is the strength of our nation. To look at this then, to retaining this diversity and then in some ways scaffolding it in the contemporary times, I'd like to flag three emergencies which are very important, in which all agriculture either has a practice or the system of agriculture, the social, political economy that needs to support it, needs to be highlighted, or agriculture must be contextualized in addressing these three emergencies. These are the emergencies of inequality, the emergency of the erosions of democracy, and of course of global climate change or global warming, which is relevant for much of the world. So in the context of India, we know that the emergency of inequality has been highlighted more recently, but the extent to which even in the post-COVID phase, we have the fact that only a few hundred families or so own something like 60% of all the resources and of capital in India, whereas a large mass don't have access to even basic resources. In the context of rural India, this is much more exacerbated, where we know that large proportions of people don't have access to land at all, and it is only new policies and programs are helping a few farmers to emerge, not only consolidating their land holdings, but to emerge as what are called agri-entrepreneurs, who in turn are also emerging as regional satraps and determining our political system. A large number of people, and I know that many of you are familiar with this, is that the landless majority and the small and marginal farmers have been excluded from these gains to resources. So new agricultural practices and policies need to recognize the need to center the needs of small landless farmers and of small and marginal farmers, to recognize them not only as farmers but as, and going beyond this rhetoric of increasing incomes only, to recognize that to do that would be to enable access to resources, which includes not only land, but also water, but also access to new forms of knowledge and to market and to even capital. And therefore it is the new kinds of the production units that include landless, small and marginal farmers that would have to determine or influence the new kinds of agricultures that need to be promoted. The second kind of emergency that which we need to look at very significantly is the erosion of democracy across the world, very well documented not only in the rise of autocrats, but of authoritarianism. And for us, the most peculiar situation in India is in which it is electoral democracy-based authoritarianism that is on the rise. This has been detrimental to rural India, and many of us who've been studying rural India have noticed that over the past 2 decades, it is the completely anti-democratic policies for rural India, especially agriculture, that has been devastating, expressed not only in the rising numbers of suicides which continue, but in policies that are promoting corporatization of agriculture. Despite the strong resistance and the official withdrawal of the three farm laws, we know that indirectly corporatization and therefore consolidation of holdings into mega structures is continuing. And all kinds of alternatives to agriculture then need to address this to make agricultural policy not only democratic, but to decentralize it to regional levels, to be much more representatives of the different kinds of farmers that we have across India. The final kind of emergency that we need to recognize is that of climate change, which many of you know is now expressed not only in unseasonal rainfall, which is devastating, especially for crop production, but also rising temperatures, extreme and adverse events of floods and cloudbursts, and also the increasing periodicity of droughts, all of which are having a significant impact on our food production. A fact that has not been recognized both by the central government and by the state government, where we see the populist declarations of increasing food through PDS, but without attention to the fact that nutritious food, different types of crops, their production levels have declined very sharply, and malnutrition continues to be a problem in India. So in that context, climate specific agriculture cannot be what is being just flagged in slogans as climate smart agriculture through new technologies, but it would have to be first to address the extinct degradation we have of soils, of water, of seeds, and of biodiversity in our agriculture. So to do all this, we would have to, again, be much more regional specific and also go down into the habitat specific. And as some of us have been arguing, that climate change action plans need to be decentralized and have to be very, very eco-specific, and there can be no single one-size-fits-all policies for India or even at the state level. So these are the three emergencies that need to be reckoned with in charting our collective, literally plowing new pathways towards sustainable agriculture. I would also try to say that unless we recognize that agriculture is the bedrock of our plurality, this tremendous diversity with sophisticated knowledge systems and skills we have, which need to be tweaked to these new conditions of both growing inequality, of eroding democracies, and the threats of climate change, we need to see that it is this plurality that needs to be recognized as our heritage. And therefore, that would be the only ways in which a more sustainable kind of agriculture and therefore more sustainable kinds of livelihoods and of life worlds of all rural citizens can be scaffolded. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vasavi, for covering a very vast ground in a rather short span of time and highlighting the broad contours around which collective initiatives have to root themselves. And any process of agroecology has to reskill farmers and others, build coalitions, strengthen democracy, and of course work towards a better climate.